So, if you're part of a transit agency that gets federal funding, there are probably two letters that can make you break out in a cold sweat. FTA. Yeah, the very thought of an oversight review tends to bring up these images of just mountains of paperwork, tons of stress, and feeling like you're under a microscope. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? Today, we're going to dive into how you can turn that fear into focus.
Does this scene feel a little too real? You get that notice in the mail and bam! Suddenly it is an all-hands-on-deck, drop-everything scramble. You're digging through old file cabinets, frantically updating documents that haven't seen the light of day in years, and really just crossing your fingers, hoping you can pull it all together before the reviewer shows up at your door. It is a massive amount of stress.
You know, this is what we call the compliance treadmill. It's that exhausting cycle of treating compliance like it's a 5-alarm fire that you only put out when the alarm bells are actually ringing. You get through the review, you breathe this huge sigh of relief, and then everything goes right back on the shelf to gather dust until the next time. It's tiring, and honestly, it's just not a great way to work.
So to get off that treadmill for good, we have to start with a really fundamental shift in how we think about this. What if the Federal Transit Administration isn't the big bad wolf? What if this relationship isn't about some adversarial inspection, but it's actually about partnership? Okay, first things first, let's be super clear on who we're talking about. The FTA's main job is to support public transit with money and technical help. The whole oversight part, that's really just them making sure that the federal tax dollars you receive are being used the way they were intended to be.
And this is the mindset shift that changes everything. Try to think of it less as an inspection, where they're snooping around trying to catch you messing up, and more like an accountability check to make sure the promises that were made are being kept. These rules aren't just burdens you have to survive, they're actually standards that protect your agency, your riders, and yeah, your funding.
You see, it all points to a shared goal. At the end of the day, the FTA wants to see federal dollars result in what we all want, right? Service that is safe, accessible, and non-discriminatory. And that last part is a huge piece of the puzzle, especially for compliance programs like Title VI. It's totally fundamental to the FTA's entire mission. Okay, so if we're going to stop fearing the process, we first have to actually understand it. What do these reviews even look like when they happen? Well, it turns out there are a few different kinds. For most urban agencies, this is the big one, the Triennial Review. And just like the name says, it comes around about every 3 years. It's a really comprehensive, deep dive into your entire operation, and it covers a whole bunch of compliance areas. If you're an urban agency, you can pretty much set your watch by this one. Now, if you're a rural agency, your experience is going to be a little different. You'll probably have what's called a state management review. The stuff they look at is very similar to the Triennial, but it's actually managed by your state's Department of Transportation. They're your main point of contact. And then you've got these things called focus reviews. So instead of looking at everything under the sun, the FTA might just zoom in on 1 or 2 specific areas. This is usually triggered by a specific concern or a complaint they've received. For instance, if someone raises an issue about equitable service, they might kick off a focused Title VI investigation. All right, so you've made it through the review. Now what? This is where a lot of that anxiety really kicks in, the fear of what that final report is going to say. But we have to get this idea of passing or failing out of our heads. That's just not how this works. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off and ask the big question head on. What actually happens if the reviewer finds a finding? Is your funding about to get yanked? Is your job on the line? Well, the short answer is almost definitely not. See, a finding usually comes in 2 flavors. A deficiency is a more significant gap. It means you'll have to create a formal corrective action plan to spell out how you're going to fix it. Then there's an advisory comment, which is more like a friendly heads up. It's not a violation yet, but it's something you should probably get ahead of before it becomes a real problem. A deficiency isn't a disaster, it's just a problem that needs a solution. And here is the absolute key takeaway. Getting a finding is normal. I mean, most agencies do. What the FDA really truly cares about is how you respond. They want to see that you're taking it seriously and that you have a realistic, believable plan to get back into compliance. A good faith effort goes a very long way with them. Okay, this brings us to the real heart of it all. If we really want to get off the compliance treadmill, we have to change our entire approach. We have to stop treating compliance like a one-time project and start treating it like an ongoing system. So a full triennial review can cover up to 23 different compliance areas. When you see a number like that, it is so easy to feel completely overwhelmed. How in the world can a small agency possibly keep up with all of that?
Will you focus? Because while there might be 23 areas, there are a handful that consistently cause the most problems for agencies. Things like your drug and alcohol program, procurement, your safety plan, or PTASP, and especially Title VI and the ADA, are where agencies trip up the most. Focusing your energy here gives you the biggest bang for your buck, for sure.
And this is the quote that just sums it all up perfectly. The agencies that breeze through oversight reviews aren't just better at scrambling before the review. The thing is, they've stopped scrambling altogether. Why? Because for them, compliance isn't an event. It's just part of how they operate, day in and day out.
So what does building that system actually look like in practice? Well, you integrate it. You build little compliance checks into your regular routines. You update your documents as you go, not 3 years later in a panic. You do your own little mini audits to catch things early, and you make sure your staff is consistently trained. That way, when the FTA does show up, you're not trying to create a binder from scratch, you're just opening one you've been keeping up with all along.
And look, for any small agency out there thinking, this sounds impossible, we don't have a dedicated compliance officer, here's the really good news. You don't need a whole department. What you need is a reliable, repeatable process that makes compliance a part of your agency's DNA. So that leaves us with one last question to really think about. When that next FTA review notice lands on your desk, what's it going to trigger at your agency? Is it going to be another frantic, caffeine-fueled scramble? Or will it be the calm confidence that comes from having a system that's already up and running? The choice is really yours.